Good morning. I am on the asparagus bed this morning. This is the really well established old asparagus bed. And right at the beginning, we lost 2 crowns, which are in this centre section here. And so it's just spare space every single year. Sometimes we put some sunflowers in here, but the sun comes from the other direction, so the flowers face away from us, so that's not much good. This year, I'm going to try sowing some cornflowers in here for cutting. So there's just going to be a big old strip of cornflowers along here. Fingers crossed. They are a magnificent variety called Black Ball, and they're like a really, really deep, dark purple colour. And yeah, I'm hoping to have massive bunches of it, basically. Massive ones. It is Thursday afternoon. I've been working this morning. I've actually been working up here, which has been a delight because I've been essentially working from home, but it seems this weather's so gorgeous I've just been using the shed, and I've got internet on my phone, so I just run my laptop off my phone. Works a dream. And that's my half day essentially in the office over, and I am going to do a bit of planting because we have got so many kohlrabi, and I've also got cavallonero, cabbages, Brussels sprouts, all of that about this size that are just desperate to go in. And the thing that I've been wondering about is because they're going in the beds up that end of the plot which have got the field beans in. The thing I've been kind of like umming and ahhing about is I didn't know whether I was going to interplant, because the field beans aren't like finished or anything, because I was going to plant these kind of in between the field beans, and then as the field beans were kind of getting too big I'd just cut them down and leave them as that. But I don't think that's going to work. So I am going to cut down half the bed of field beans. I don't know if you remember way back when I was sowing the field beans, I was talking about the fact that they are actually a broad bean, exactly the same, apart from the fact that the broad beans have been, or the broad beans that we grow for broad beans have been kind of bred so that their beans are really big and beautiful and lush. But essentially the field beans are exactly the same, and you do get broad beans off them, it's just that they're less broad. They're little tiny ones. And I was quite interested in having a go at leaving like half a bed of them to see, just to have a bit of a compare what the beans are like. But I don't know if I'm going to end up doing that because I've got really overexcited like sowing brassicas, and we've got so many of them to go in. Anyway, I'm going to put the kettle on, have a cup of coffee, think it through, probably discuss it with the mother, and then we'll come up with a plan. And I better get planting because there's a lot of them. I'm actually dressed really sunny today. Like, look at this, yellow. Who would have thought? Like, normally yellow makes me look like I've got jaundice, but for some reason I don't mind having jaundice today. Yeah, so I'm feeling really summery, and this is super thin, this jumper, and it's actually chillier than I thought it was. Like, it's absolutely fine in the shed, obviously. I mean, I've got the doors open and it's lovely, but there's no breeze. But the breeze outside is proper nippy. It's like gorgeous sunshine and beautiful, but like that breeze is cold and strong. So I might have to put my coat on when I go back out there, which is a shame because I'm really feeling the yellow. So these are the 3 beds of field beans. This is where all the brassicas are going to go this year. Because the field beans, although I was saying you can eat the beans, they are a green manure, and what they do is make the nitrogen available in the soil for the next crop that you plant in there. So I'm not digging these out. Traditionally what you would do is cut them off at the base and dig them in. So you're digging them into the soil and they rot down in the soil, and that's kind of part of the green manure process. But we don't really dig things in here. So what I'm going to do is they will become part of my compost, or they'll become part of a mulch on another bed. But I'm just leaving the root balls in underneath the soil. I'm just nipping them off at the surface. I'm going to put a link underneath, and if I can there'll be one on the screen about now, but I'm definitely going to put a link underneath to the blog post I wrote when we started sowing the field beans back in November. Just kind of goes through why we're using field beans and how they work. So if you're interested, have a read of that. It'll give you much more detail. Brassicas are really quite nitrogen hungry, being leafy greens, you know, so I'm expecting them, I mean, I'm putting my cards on the table here, but I'm expecting them to do really, really well following these field beans. I have high hopes. So these are, so the first lot that I'm getting in are going to be the kohlrabi, because I've got I mean, they're looking huge. They really need to be out of these pots. And last year, the kohlrabi that I planted when they're at this stage were absolutely fine. And then I left another load in the pots just slightly too long, and they never did anything. So I learnt my lesson there. These need to go in pronto. I'm going to give them quite a bit of space. So I'm going to get kind of, 5 in a row here and just stagger them backwards. Gives them ample space to get really quite big. This is the same spacing that I did last year. I'm going to give them a really good soak before I plant them out, because they've been sat in the cold frame for the last week or so, and it's been really hot in there. So yeah, giving them a good soak. Mum is busy deadheading the daffs. The purpose of deadheading the daffs isn't to encourage more flowering, obviously that's not going to happen, but you're stopping them putting all their energy into forming seed. You don't want them to form seed, you want them to put all the energy they can back into the bulb for next year's flowers. The daffs have been incredible this year actually, and because it's been so cold, they've really lasted. So last year when we had that really hot spring, they were out for about 2 weeks and all the daffs were over. And this year, one of the advantages of it being so much cooler is that they've lasted so long. So these ones that Mum's deadheading right now, they've been out for weeks. That's one advantage of the cold, isn't it? All the flowers last so much longer. Having a really hard time regulating my temperature because it is so sunny and the sun itself is so warm, and I've got this windproof jacket on. And with the windproof jacket on, I'm roasting hot, really boiling. It's like being in your own private greenhouse. But yeah, the moment I take it off, it's absolutely freezing because of the wind. So I'll just get on with it, Jessie. Next one's to go in. I've just chopped a few more of the field beans back a little bit further, and I'm going to put these Cavallonero in. I'm spacing these quite a lot wider. So the kohlrabi will kind of form, they're going to stay very low and form their sort of bulb shape of their stem, and then you harvest the whole lot. Whereas the Cavallonero will grow up, it's a kale, so it gets really quite tall, and it's going to be in the ground for quite a long time, and we're going to be picking it for, about a year. So one of the reasons that I've planted the kohlrabi closer to the end of the bed than the Cavallonero is because when I've got the netting over this, the netting is going to come down at a slope to the ends to be tucked in. If I've got the tall stuff on the end, it's going to be a problem with the netting. So I'm kind of angling them with the short stuff at either end and tall stuff closer to the middle. And I'm just giving these a really good water in because the wind is absolutely ripping the moisture out of the soil at the moment. It's just, it's so dry, especially for really young seedlings because their roots aren't totally into the soil yet and they're not able to kind of sort of forage for their own water. That's really important when you've been sowing seed because they're so shallow. As the wind is taking the moisture out of the soil, it's leaving them really, really dry. So I'm just watering. This is where I've got my carrots sown. One advantage of having this carrot root fly box over them when they're so young is actually it's just stopping that wind just slightly. So it's not drying out inside this box as quickly as it is outside, which is an advantage because carrot seed will not germinate if they dry out. They really get the hump and then it's just all over. Also, it's really handy to be able to water through EnviroMesh. What you don't want to be doing is lifting it off and on all the time, obviously, unless you are actually harvesting. And being able to water through it is a joy. But it is important to have the top quite taut because if you just throw EnviroMesh over the top of something and it dips in the middle, whenever it rains or whenever you water, although it does go through the EnviroMesh, it kind of tends to run down to the middle, so you get a lot of water in the centre of the ground and then the edges don't get anything. So if you're making a carrot root fly box or anything like that, just make sure the top of it's quite taut and that the water will actually go through and not just run down to the lowest point. We're going to head home now, girlies. We are. We're going to head home. Means you've got to go back in your house, ladies. I have been stuck at the computer all morning. I'll talk more about that at the end of the video because I'm trying to get the website back up, but I'll tell you about that at the end. But yeah, so we made it up here. It was pretty cloudy this morning actually, so we haven't missed like the best of the weather or anything. It's now blue skies, but it's pretty breezy. And the breeze is cold still. Like, I don't know what's going on with this weather. It is still, I mean, it's dry and cold. Like, that's not what you want. You want warm and wet. Warm and wet. No, dry and cold. But what we are going to do today is take off the bubble wrap from the greenhouse. So I don't know if you remember way back when, it must have been around November time, I think. Maybe, yeah, probably mid-November. We bubble wrapped the inside of the greenhouse and it worked an absolute treat. Normally the greenhouse has got a really massive fluctuation in temperature, and to be fair, it still had a really huge fluctuation in temperature, but that's been everything throughout April. But it kept it from really plummeting, which has been just fantastic. So, but I've got to say we didn't use it to its full advantage because we weren't sure that that was what's going to happen. So just backtrack, sorry. Normally we've only got the greenhouse, obviously we haven't had the polytunnel for a winter. This was our first winter with it, and normally the greenhouse fluctuates really dramatically in temperature. It gets very cold and it's just a bit of a nightmare in the winter, so we've never really used it for much other than storing plants to stop them getting like the worst of the frost damage. So that's all it's been used for. And then we started using the polytunnel this year for the first year, and that's been really successful, but only with some stuff. And all the stuff like lettuces and all the things that kind of rotted out because it's so humid in there. I mean, I must have planted 25 lettuces in there and we've got 2. Admittedly, the 2 that survived that first kind of couple of months of damp cold have flourished and they look incredible, but most of them just rotted off at the bottom because of the humidity. But the greenhouse has not got a humidity problem, and now we've solved the heating problem. Like, the bubble wrap has made a huge difference to it. I reckon next year we're on for a really good winter plan. It's just spring, right? It's just turning spring and I'm already like excited and planning for the winter. Like, it's ridiculous. Sorry. Back to spring. I'll talk to you all about that another time. Basically, I've got a big winter plan this year. But today we are taking the bubble wrap out of the greenhouse. I'm also going to feed the garlic and shallots. I've just got some organic bloodfish and bone, which I'm going to feed them with because they're just starting to look a bit yellow, although they've looked really healthy up until now, but they're just starting to kind of peter off a bit, and I think that's going to be a mixture of the really dry weather and they just need a bit of a boost. So I'm going to do that today. I've got some other bits and pieces that could go out. I'm going to reassess. I put a load of them in the cold frame, so I'm going to have a good look through that, have a think. Yeah, right, I think I'm going to put the kettle on. I'm going to attack the greenhouse. Welcome to my bubble wrap palace. Yeah, basically this has just been a huge success this year, and major part of the success was like changing the way we've attached it, because we've tried in previous years but it hasn't worked, and this year these clips have made all the difference. So previously we've tried to kind of stick it up with various stuff and it falls down and it's frustrating, and this year, although it's just starting to come loose at this end, like that's the only bit that's fallen off for the whole of the winter, which has just been brilliant. We do need to buy more of these clips though, because those little green ones don't work on the end panels, and that was the only thing. So I've just got to pick up some more of them and then we are set for next winter. Absolutely fantastic. We got some bits and pieces starting in here. I've got some zinnias, which were very kindly given to me by Snapdragon Diaries. I've got some basil coming up and also some Thai basil. which is in here. So that will be going into the polytunnel as soon as the stuff that's in there is finished. We've got some little bits and pieces coming up in here. They are Rebecca. And my nasturtiums are just starting to push the compost up, which is exciting. Yeah, bits and pieces. This is the third wave of sunflowers. We've got coriander, sorry ash, and dill, all looking pretty lush. Now this is a bit of a disaster. I say disaster, it's just a fail basically. These are the two jalapenos, a black one and a green one, that I overwintered last year totally successfully, and they both came back looking brilliant. This year, however, it's been about 6 degrees colder. It's been absolutely freezing despite them being in here, and I think they're dead. I think they are gone. The ones that I had at home in the conservatory, however, have survived. So yeah, I think it was just too cold for them. So next year when I try and overwinter them, I will be taking them home and putting them in the conservatory. Yes. Sparkly greenhouse. Actually, it's not sparkly, it's really dusty, but yeah. The next thing that I want to do, I'm going to feed the garlic and the shallots with the bloodfish and bone, and then I'm going to tie up the broad beans because they're getting a bit all over the place. This is a really fabulous camera angle, isn't it? All you can see is the end of my nose and my mouth. Brilliant. Brilliant. That's a bit better. But yeah, basically I'm just going to feed the wind's blowing now. I'm just going to get on with it. Bloodfish and bone is a really good kind of all-round fertiliser. It's got a really good mixture of nitrogen and phosphate and potash. So it's good for leaf growth, it's good for root growth, and it's good for flowering if you're trying to encourage flowers. What I like particularly about it is that it's got a really good balance between it being kind of an immediate, instant boost for plants, but it's also a slow release fertiliser. So you just basically get the best of all worlds with it. I'm giving this a sprinkle at about 50 grams per square metre, and this bed is about 2 square metres, or at least the patch that I've got these growing in is about 2 square metres, so about 100 grams in my little shaky box. And I'm just going in underneath the foliage because you don't want to throw it all over the top of the foliage because it could burn. I've given the soil a really good soaking before I'm sprinkling this, and then after I've done it I will give it another really good soaking, which will also help wash it off the leaves if I've got it kind of all up and over the foliage. This is going to last them about 6 weeks-ish, so I will give them another feed in about 6 weeks. But by then I should be into kind of full-on comfrey feed making time. I mean, at the moment I don't have any comfrey to make any feed from, which is why I'm using the bloodfish and bone, which is a purchased product. But by the time the 6 weeks is up on this kind of fertiliser, I will be feeding these with my own comfrey feed. So the broad beans, I mean, they're looking really healthy, which is a complete surprise because I thought they were going to be a disaster. As you know, like earlier in the season, I didn't really hold out much hope for them. But what that's kind of backfired on me, because normally when I plant the broad beans and as they start growing up, I would be making like a interlaced mesh with string that keeps them all upright as they go. But I'd kind of given up on these ones, I've got to admit, and I didn't do it. So now they're all kind of flip-flopped all over the place. And that's not really that much of a problem, apart from the fact that because it's been so windy, bits are breaking off. Like, look at this. Perfectly good branch, all those flowers on there, they're all pollinated, they've got little tiny beans inside, and it's just been snapped off by the wind. So I'm kind of tidying these up, not so much for aesthetics or kind of ease of picking or anything like that. I'm just tying them up. Anything that looks like it could be vulnerable to being blown over or blown off, I will be just kind of tying up. That's the aim of the game. But have a look at this, right? So last year, my beans looked like that, head to toe. Can you see all that black fly in there? These are being farmed by the ants. They are farming them because they want the aphids to produce their honeydew, which is like, you know, the sugar sap that they produce, which is what leads your plants to get really sticky. And then the ants become like the protectors, and they fend off any kind of ladybirds or anything that wants to feed on them. So it's a bit of a difficult situation. Generally I just wipe them off manually because I don't want to use anything on them. I mean, this one I've just nipped out at the tip because it's particularly infested and the plant's pretty tall already, so I've just nipped it out, but you know, meh. But other than that, they are looking so healthy considering I'd completely written them off. There's loads of beans on them. After that first massive frost we had, they were completely black, and I've never seen broad beans. I mean, I know they're really tough and they sulk though when there's a bit of cold weather. I've never seen them as black as these ones were. So yeah, despite a load of trials with these, I think we're going to have a good broad bean harvest. Got quite a lot going on. The asparagus are starting. We had our first asparagus the other night. We shared it between the three of us. It always starts off that way. But yeah, so we got some. Lily is guarding the asparagus bed. Thank you very much, Lily. Actually, she's pretty pissed off because she knows there's cat food in the shed and we're not giving it to her at the moment. So, yeah, it's been so windy, it keeps blowing the top of the covered polytunnel bed off, but things are looking good in here. And do you remember the radishes I sowed last week? They are all coming up, which is exciting. I'll be munching through them fairly shortly. I'm really looking forward to that. And do you remember the really weedy, leggy lettuces I planted out a couple of weeks ago? That's these guys. They've come on leaps and bounds in here. Looking really healthy, which is nice. It's always worth planting them out, even if they look like there's no chance. And this is the new asparagus bed. So the asparagus that's coming up in the other one is the new one. We've got a couple of curly ones here. They've been like nipped or bitten as they've come through the soil, so they're curled, but they're coming up here. We won't be picking this bed for another 2 years, but it's nice to know that all the crowns have taken, which is pretty good. Pretty pleased with that. What else have we got going on here? Yeah, so these are the field beans. This bed is the bed that I think I'm going to be leaving half to trial the beans, because these are the lushest looking and they're just about to flower actually, so we'll be able to get them pretty sharpish. I can't pass up the opportunity to tell you about how much I'm in love with these tulips. Look at this one. This is the newest one to come out. It's like it's been painted. It's gorgeous. And we've had a medium level disaster on the apricot tree. So right at the beginning, we had masses of fertilised ones. They were all starting to come out. And then we've had a couple of really, really cold nights, and quite a few of them have gone black on the tips. Can you see that one's black? That's not going to do anything. It's really difficult to film this, I'm sorry. Some of them haven't done anything at all, and they got when they're really small, like these ones. But we do have some. I've counted about 20 or so. Sorry, this isn't focusing. Beautiful camera work, Jessie. But we do have some really good looking ones on there which haven't been got by the frost yet, touch wood. But so it looks like we're going to have apricots, hey Lou? We're going to have some apricots, girly. I think it's time to go home, sausage. Are you ready to go back inside? I don't think you are. I don't think you are, woo woo woo. Yes, she wasn't ready to go back inside. It took absolutely ages to get her to go in. All right. Yeah, cheers, by the way. So we've had masses of sunshine, but obviously it's been really cold, as you've heard me whinging about it. But next week we're due a load of rain and the temperatures are getting warmer. So my only fear of that is that it's going to bring out the slugs. You can't win, can you? I mean, in this weather, there's been no slugs whatsoever. I haven't even heard a whisper of a slug. But yeah, that's probably going to change this week. So I hope I've still got some peas when I speak to you next. Yeah, with all this weather though, I've really seen the benefits of having a really good thick mulch on the soil, not just for, not just in terms of kind of feeding the soil and getting it incorporated into the soil and everything, but just in terms of protecting it from the wind basically and the heat. So for the last 2 years we've been doing this really thick mulching, and the ones that we did at the beginning of this year or the very end of last year, so like the autumn mulch, underneath that layer of mulch it's still damp. Like even with this really dry weather, I mean we're desperate for rain, but on those beds, like you go down about this far and it's actually damp, like really damp. And the other beds where we haven't put a mulch on since kind of this time last year are just dust. Really made a huge difference. And we're waiting for another delivery. So normally when we order the horse manure, it kind of comes in like they say 3 weeks or 2 weeks or something like that. But this time when we ordered it, they said 10 weeks. I mean, that's just because like everybody's wanting horse manure. I mean, the demand has gone up so much, and they've put the prices up as well, which is not so good. There are worse things for people to be getting into than gardening and growing veg, isn't there, really? I think, you know, we're all right with that. But yeah, so 10 weeks. So some of the things that we were going to plant out, I'm being a bit kind of funny about, because normally I'd put a really good heavy mulch on in like March, and then by May time it's ready to kind of plant into. But we're not even going to get the compost until kind of the end of May now, so don't know what I'm going to do. So what I've been working on this week is trying to get the website back up. Most of YouTube's searching algorithms are kind of designed really for finding how-tos, and obviously I'm not really doing how-tos specifically. I mean, sometimes the Saturday ones are a bit more kind of direct, but generally the vlogs are just a whole load of stuff that I've been doing that week. And so I set up the episode guide, which was just kind of a searchable thing to be like sowing carrots, harvesting carrots, or, you know, like pricking out lettuces or something. You could look for it and then it would tell you what episode it was in. But that kind of totally got away from me, and so I'm trying to reinstate that now. But the biggest thing was the seed exchange, which first of all I'd like to say thank you to everybody who joined in on that. That was great. I got loads of seeds and I sent loads of seeds out, and it was really nice. However, must have been about 2 months ago now, I got targeted by spammers basically. So within the space of about 3 days, I had 1,800 people sign up to the seed exchange. I mean, not real people, obviously, just like erroneous emails, which we all just like one letter apart. I mean, so I took the whole thing offline. Like it was just useless. It wasn't going to work. So I took the whole lot offline, including the whole website and everything, which meant that the blog went down as well. And since then, I've been trying to kind of build it back up with precautions against that. So I will reinstate the seed exchange, but it won't be done via my website. It will be done on Discord, which is another platform. It's slightly different, it's slightly more complicated to use, but not much once you get the hang of it. And lots of people use Discord. So I think we're going to do a Discord board. But what I was trying to say was that after I took the website down, I had to kind of rebuild it from the bottom. So I am hoping that by the time this video goes out on Tuesday afternoon, I will have the website back up and running, which means all the old blog posts will be restored, including things like the chard lasagna and the bean stew and all those kind of ones which I keep being asked for. They are on there and they're still there. I'm going to turn it back on hopefully this evening. So by the time this comes out, it will be done and I will have got through any of the bugs, any links that don't work, I will have worked out. So that is my aim, fingers crossed. It also means I'm going to go back to putting recipes up as a kind of an archive of what we've been picking and what we've been using, what we've been storing, and different recipes and ways to use it. Because I think in terms of the cooking your own, is that I think you have to be so much more versatile with vegetable recipes. Whereas if you're going to the supermarket, you've got a specific recipe in mind, you go to the supermarket, you buy all the ingredients and you come back and you make a particular dish. When you are growing your own and you've got your own kind of slightly erratic larder that's kind of throwing things at you all the time that you've got to use or give away or whatever, you have to be a bit more adaptive. And what I'm really hoping to do is build up a repertoire of not necessarily recipes. So they will be recipes, but they're more like a structure of things to do with produce, and it can be kind of interchangeable, you know? Basically, I'm looking to build up an archive of exciting things to do with vegetables that you can kind of just put whatever you're growing at the time into. Do you see what I mean? I will try and clarify my thoughts and come back to you on that next week. Yeah, and that's basically where we stand, chaps. I am going to have this beer, I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to cook some dinner, and then it's back to work tomorrow. It's back to work tomorrow. I don't know, is anyone else finding this really difficult to go back to normal? I've been to the pub a couple of times, sat outside, you know, like you're supposed to. Firstly, it's not the same because you can't just wander into a pub and sit at the bar, which is my normal kind of way of going about things. But basically there's a lot going on, and COVID gave me a lot of time to do stuff, and now we're kind of easing out of COVID and I've got my second jab coming up in like 3 weeks time. Like we're coming out of it now, and I'm a bit like, whoa, slow down, I've got stuff to get on with. Because going to the pub and having an actual life outside of YouTube and the allotment takes up time, you know, that I've kind of filled with other things. It's not good, is it? It's not good. One of the things I would say about this cold spring is that because it's been consistently cold, you know, last year we had like, it was really hot, and then we had that like little kind of kick in the ribs right at the end, we had a bit of a frost. Well, this year, because it's been consistently cold, it has really like held me back from sowing stuff that it's just too early to sow. So I'm not even touching my beans until May. I'm not going anywhere near them, which is quite a thing for me, I can tell you, because normally they're in by now. This weekend coming, I'm going to be sowing my courgettes and pumpkins, so that'll probably be Saturday's video, to be honest. And that's kind of it, chaps. I hope you've all had a wonderful week, and I hope you've got a wonderful week ahead of you, and I will see you this time next week right here. Cheers.